Hello, good morning, and welcome to the show with me, Jillian Godsil. Today, we're going to talk about tokenomics. This is a fascinating and slightly confusing subject. And here to clear all things up is Roderick McKinley, who is a CFA and tokenomics designer and advisor. Roderick, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So the general theme of this interview actually is kind of funny. People have said to me, is tokenomics, is it a design incentive or is it a Ponzi scheme? We're going to clear it all up and make it clear as mud by the end of it. So, but before we jump into it, tell me a bit about your traditional finance and economics background. So you come from like real world TradFi.
Yeah, I mean, I studied economics at bachelor's and master's level, motivated by the wish to understand economic inequality and why we have, environmental mismanagement and degradation. I then took that foundation to go and land an economic analyst role at Bloomberg, covering the energy sector. Then I came to the view that to drive the impact that I cared about, I would be better off working in finance. So I took my CFA exams and ended up working to help private equity principals invest in renewable energy infrastructure out in Chile, deal sizes of a few $100 million. And I then got burnt out on those back-to-back 20-hour days, the lack of personal autonomy. And I set up as an individual, independent business modeling consultant, right? So this was really helpful for me because I started thinking much more flexibly about different kinds of business designs and helping to attend to a really broad variety of decision-making concerns by managers, executives, investors, and founders. So yeah, that's my traditional background.
That's good. A bit of burnout always helps because it gives you new perspective. So when did you first come across crypto then? When did that enter your world?
Well, I'm pretty sure I first heard about it in 2013 with the first Bitcoin bubble.
Okay. And what were your impressions? You say bubble. Were you a bit skeptical at that stage?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the dominant narrative was how it was being used to facilitate dark web transactions and how this bubble was being fueled by this unsustainable mania. And me, with the benefit of all this, traditional education, I said, well, I'd better stay out of this. And of course, in some ways, I was very wrong.
And so tokenomics, I mean, like, you're kind of like a tokenomics expert here now, and it's a very new field. Can you explain what it is? So people perhaps who kind of like, it's tokens, but what is it? Tokenomics it's a whole economy around tokens. Explain to me how it works.
Sure. So let's look at the word tokenomics. It references economics in there. Economics is a discipline that studies how humans behave with regard to scarce resources, right? And then how those behaviors change the availability and distribution of those resources. So I'd say tokenomics is similarly broad, but we are now focusing on digital assets as the scarce resource. And we take on more of a kind of design flavor in our thinking, because what we can now do with these digital tokens is make use of freely programmable characteristics to influence the ways that people behave and interact with each other, and also therefore shape the distribution, the outcomes for the distribution of resources in these digital economies. So in terms of what I would actually do, it would be a mix of designing these economic features and helping people understand how to use the technology in a way that fits their business, fits their target users, and that helps them make a compelling case to fundraise with.
Okay, that's interesting. You mentioned during that explanation, it's how you influence people's behavior. That's kind of interesting. So it's in relation to projects and stuff like that. So does money always do that? Does money always influence people's behavior or availability?
Yeah, I mean, there's some really in sometimes in paradoxical ways, right? There's a pretty famous experiment out there that shows that when you put people on a charitable task and you don't pay them, they will do more work than if you pay them a rate. So yes, incentives do work, but we need more experimental evidence sometimes to tease apart how they actually end up influencing behaviors. And for me personally, I think this is a really exciting time because we get to effectively run loads of micro experiments. Now, phrased like that, I think it may fire some alarm bells for people because they think, oh, we're influencing behaviors, we're manipulating people. Well, no, because so long as membership of any community or participation in any scheme is voluntary, then people can choose whether they want to be in or out. It would be something like China's social credit system is dystopian, right? Because everybody's forced into it no matter what. So we want to be nudged to behave in different ways. You put the cookie jar in the cupboard because that's going to help you eat better, for example. So this idea of influencing behavior doesn't have to be malicious or bad.
Okay, that's an interesting distinction. Now, I've heard before there's a difference between supply side engineering and smart contract feature driven tokenomics. Can you explain the difference between those two and how they work?
Yeah, so with the, we said that the digital token is programmable, right? So one of the things you can program in is how many tokens are there and how quickly are they released into an economy to various parties, right? So that is what I would describe as supply side engineering or token supply design. And it absolutely is a really important area of tokenomics because without digital asset scarcity, the assets are not able to acquire or carry value, right? If there's just like an infinite supply of this stuff, like nobody cares anymore. So the supply is an important part of the design to get right. But then you have this other side, right, which is to do with the programmable logic that your tokens have and how that determines how they respond. And that design exercise begins with a very different question. It's like, what value exchange are we trying to create, to enhance, or to support? And this could be all manner of things, right? Because code is so flexible and open-ended. So we might be tokenizing a notion of value that's specific to a particular community. We may be creating a new way for people to trade honestly and transparently with each other. We may be using the code to automate business logic and processes so that they no longer need to be done by expensive and error-prone humans, right? And by doing that, we make certain business designs economical at all scales, which weren't economical before. However, when you do all that kind of stuff, you're still keeping an eye on the token supply because a lot of these mechanisms are going to influence how many tokens are held by the various stakeholder groups in your economy. And that is going to influence the price. And then that has repercussions for the ability of your token to work as an incentivizing instrument and as a mechanism that allows your users to gradually build value in your project or ecosystem over time.
So it's still a bit complex. Could you perhaps give us some practical examples of projects where you've worked on and what has influenced you? Maybe not the nitty-gritty, but if a project A, what did you do to make it as successful as possible?
Sure. So, I can think of 3 projects here. I've chosen them because they are show you how diverse and varied the work and the design process can be. So in the first case, we have actually, before I dive in, let me make clear that I have advised these projects and I have an ongoing financial interest in them. And independently of that, nothing I say here at any time should be taken as any kind of investment advice.
Thank you.
There we go. Lawyers are happy.
All
right. So the first one is Parallel Chain, which is a new layer 1 blockchain smart contract development platform. These guys approached me looking to design incentives that would sustainably reward behaviors and actions that secure the state of the ledger, right? That make sure all the transactions entered into it are consensually agreed to. Now, I couldn't just copy the designs from other layer 1s because Parallel Chain has a consensus process that is pretty novel and unique. It has like 3 layers of authority. And the way these authorities remain decentralized overall is to have their voting power balanced against each other. So I had to take those objectives into account and designed a reward system that increases the rewards to nodes on the network who are helping to rebalance governance towards this desired state, and that decreases rewards that are paid to nodes that are getting too large, that are acquiring too much power for themselves or for their authority class. So that was one example. Next up, we have GBC AI. These guys are creating a whole suite of products and services for the blockchain space that have been built using machine learning and AI technology. Once the team decided that they wanted to fundraise using a token sale, they approached me to help them design utilities or features for their tokens, right? So in this case, I had to work very closely with the team to understand the core capabilities of this machine learning and AI technology and help them come up with a broad array of products that would appeal to as broad a user base as possible so that the token gets used as early on as possible. And we came up with products like, coming up with a live screener in your browser that warns you if there are any concerns with active Web3 elements in your current page, or services that help you optimize the configuration of your blockchain, the efficiency of your dApp design, using insights that are generated from a proprietary test simulation environment that they have created. So I helped them to design these products so that they're tokenizable, so that they're usable by lots of people. And then I also helped them, come up with a way of structuring their revenue collection so that, they would be collecting assets that would have stable value, that would decrease their reliance on having to use their own token to fund their ongoing expenses. And then tie that back to the scarcity of the utility token through a policy mechanism where the stable coins are used to buy back and burn the project's utility token. So that's GBC AI. And then finally, we have Iconic, which is an NFT marketplace and a social platform that serves esports and gaming communities, right? I was approached when the team had completed their core product, which allows users to record their gameplay and publish it and mint it as an NFT from within their favorite gaming console, right? So that's pretty cool. And then, I was engaged again to develop utilities. But in this case, it really was, the exercise was led by me thinking about who the end users were in particular. Now that we're thinking about gamers, that's a really specific profile, and I could dive deep into questions like, what do these users want? What do they need? What would they be excited by? And, after doing that kind of thinking, I came to the view that there was a great opportunity to build out the utilities in a social direction that would allow these users to play mini games together, to support their favorite esports stars or content creators, right? So, yeah, that's Iconic, and those are the three projects.
Very different projects and very different approaches, and it's nice because it's not just, because sometimes when people think of tokenomics, they think, oh, it's the graph, the pie chart, and so much for founders, so much for blah, 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 and a few vesting periods, and that's it. So that's kind of mad. So tell me, the whole point of tokenomics is having a TGE. It's actually having something like to raise money. So what, coming from your TradFi background, and obviously you're totally immersed in this now, what are the benefits to doing a TGE, and what drawbacks might there be?
Right. So the benefit of a TGE as a fundraising approach is that depending on market conditions, but I think regardless of market conditions, it still can be a quicker route to fundraising. In technical speak, we would say it lowers the total cost of capital, right? And that's partly also because investors potentially have a route to liquidate, to exit, and realize a financial return sooner. But therein lies the problem, because some of the old school, some of the native blockchain investors have gotten really fixed on the expectation that all returns should be that they can come by these returns really early in the life of a project compared to when you realize a return from equity in a startup investment. I think there's not enough patience and there is not enough support to allow projects to go through the careful process that they need to in order to build. So the fact that market conditions are a little bit weaker may actually be a good thing, because it steers people away from this, rushing in to make returns super quick, and maybe steers people more towards the slow and steady approach.
That's interesting to actually talk about a bear market being beneficial. I suppose people say in bear markets, projects build, they're not flashing around the money. So there are some good points. If people want to find out more about what you do, Roderick, and maybe to ask your advice on their own tokenomics, where can they find you? What's the best place to find you?
I'm on LinkedIn, so just search me by my name. And I have a personal website, a professional website at ourmckinley.net. So that also provides like a quick view on all the services I provide. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today. Tokenomics Explained.
Thank you.